The last time we met. The clock ticked backward. Each click a quiet reminder of moments that had slipped away. 10:08. It was 6 a.m. when Parker's phone buzzed. She turned her head slowly, unsure if she wanted to see the message waiting there. She hesitated, staring at the unsaved number flashing on the screen, her chest tight. She tapped the screen. "I'm coming back." The message was from Lena West. Parker clenched the phone, the familiar pang stirring up emotions she'd buried deep. A year without Lena had been both relief and torture, each day blurring into the next as she convinced herself that Lena was just a figment of a past she no longer wanted. "It's 6 in the morning. Don't start with me," Parker typed and sent, though she kept her eyes on the screen long after. Just when she thought Lena had finally heard her, another message popped up. "Meet me for breakfast?" Paka sight. The idea of seeing Lena again felt surreal. Like tuning in to a long-forgotten song she thought she'd stopped loving. Sleep was impossible now. Tick, tick, tick. 7:06. An hour later, Parker walked through the park, hands in her pockets, gaze locked on the ground beneath her feet, which was littered with delicate wildflowers that had crept over the pathways. She used to care once about not stepping on them, but these days she barely noticed them. She made her way to the Early Bird Cafe, the only place open in town before sunrise. The familiar hum of the diner welcomed her, each clinking coffee cup and murmured conversation transporting her to the times when she'd been here with Lena, sitting at their favorite booth by the window. Lena sat there now, her profile turned to the glass, lost in thought. The years had softened her features, but sharpened something else about her. She looked tired yet effortlessly beautiful. Parker swallowed hard, memories flooding in faster than she could control. "Parker," Lena said, as if saying her name for the first time in ages. Parker forced herself to respond. "Good to see you." Her voice was barely steady, but Lena smiled gently, choosing not to mention it. They sat in a tense silence until coffee appeared at Parker's elbow, warming her hands as she held it, staring into the steam. She couldn't remember ordering, but the Early Bird was known for serving what people needed, whether they asked for it or not. "So how's life?" Parker finally asked, and Lena launched into a story about the city, the job, the miles between here and there. But as Parker listened, it was hard to focus on the words. Each detail felt like a reminder of how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. "And you?" Lena's question drew Parker back. "What did I miss?" Parker glanced at the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. 6:54. "Let's walk," Parker said, her chest too tight for the words she couldn't bring herself to say. They walked along empty streets, quiet beneath the glow of street lamps. Each light seemed to flicker brighter as they approached, only to dim as they moved past. The silence felt like a tether between them, fragile yet unbreakable. "I missed this," Lena said softly, mostly to herself. "I missed you." Parker felt something twist inside, a bitter laugh trying to escape. "Then why did you leave?" she thought, swallowing the words down. She didn't want this. She didn't want to hurt all over again. Their hands brushed as they walked. Parker felt the warmth lingering, even as her mind screamed at her to keep her distance. "How long are you staying?" she finally asked. Lena sighed. "Just a few days, maybe a week." The words hit Parker like a stone. She wanted to run, to escape before Lena could disappear again, leaving her to pick up the pieces of her heart one more time. But she didn't. She looked up at the sky, squinting against the stars that sparkled too brightly overhead. They reached the old oak tree near the park's edge. The tree had seen them grow up, watched them share secrets beneath its branches, and served as the silent witness to the end of so much. Parker couldn't hold back any longer. "What are you doing here, Lena?" Lena turned, her expression unreadable. She looked away toward the distant clock tower. Tick, tick, tick. 3, 2, 1. "I don't know," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. I missed you. I thought I could forget this feeling, but I can't. I needed to see you to know you're still here." Parker softened. The ache of resentment drained, replaced by something just as tender, just as terrifying. She had feared this moment, but hearing the tremor in Lena's voice, she couldn't ignore the familiar pull. "Lena, I know it's unfair, but don't I get to want this?" Lena's voice was filled with desperation. Just for a moment, Parker closed her eyes, feeling the words settle deep inside. "It's not selfish to want happiness," she replied. "But maybe it is when it relies on someone else." A silence stretched between them, vast yet somehow comforting. "Do you believe in fate?" Lena finally asked, her fingers brushing a lock of Parker's hair. Parker looked at her, and for a moment she almost forgot the pain. "I'm not sure," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Come back with me," Lena said, her eyes filled with something Parker couldn't bear to name. Parker hesitated, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She shook her head, the image of them together growing colder in her mind. "I can't come with you any more than you can stay." "So this is it then?" Lena asked, her voice quiet. There was no accusation, just a sad acknowledgement of what they both knew was true. Parker nodded, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Maybe in another life." Tick, tick, tick. 0. The clock started again, moving forward 1, 2, 3. As dawn broke, Parker walked away, back through the flowers she had once trampled. The ghost of Lena West faded with each step she took, and in the first light of morning, Parker felt the familiar ache. For now, she would hold on to this version of Lena, the one that stayed close, tucked inside her heart. She knew she'd dream of her again, of stars and street lamps and hands brushing against each other. But at least she could leave those dreams behind in the quiet hours of the morning, where only the ticking clock could keep her company. The morning light crept across the sky, inching through soft faded clouds. Parker walked, feeling each step weigh her down, as she thought of how many times she'd told herself she was done waiting on Lena. But now that she was here, Parker couldn't quite let go. She passed the cafe where they'd shared countless breakfasts, the park where they'd spent lazy afternoons, and the bus stop where she'd last watched Lena leave. She finally reached her small house at the edge of town. It felt strange to be alone after having Lena so close, even just for a few hours. Parker made herself coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window. She knew she should be relieved, but relief felt miles away. A quiet ache settled inside her, a hollow, unshakable sadness. She could almost imagine the scrape of Lena's voice filling the empty space around her. The minutes drifted, turning to hours. Parker glanced at the clock. It was just past noon, and the day stretched out before her, hollow and endless. She almost didn't hear the soft knock on her door. When she opened it, Lena stood there, her face flushed from the chill in the air, her eyes a mixture of uncertainty and relief. Parker blinked, caught off guard, her heart stammering. "Parker," Lena started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I don't deserve to show up like this, but I can't leave without knowing. I need to know if you could ever forgive me." Parker opened her mouth, but words failed her. All the things she wanted to say, the anger, the hurt, the longing, they swirled together, tangling her thoughts. She stepped aside, letting Lena into the warmth of the house. They sat in silence for a long time, Lena on the worn couch and Parker across from her, perched on the edge of the armchair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Why did you come back, really?" Parker finally asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Lena looked down, her hands twisting in her lap. "I kept telling myself that if I just left, if I stayed away long enough, I'd stop thinking about you. I thought that by leaving, I'd be doing us both a favor." She paused, her voice catching. "But it didn't work. I thought maybe I'd find a way to be happy somewhere else. But I was just lost." Parker studied her, noting the shadows under Lena's eyes, the way her fingers trembled slightly. It wasn't easy seeing her like this, vulnerable and raw. And yet it was also strangely comforting. There was no pretense between them now. Only the undeniable truth of what they had meant to each other. Parker took a shaky breath. "It hurt when you left, Lena. I tried to move on, tried to convince myself that I didn't need you. But I haven't been able to let go." Lena looked up, her gaze soft but intense. "Parker, I don't expect you to forget what I did. I know I broke your heart. I know I broke mine too. But I can't go on without at least trying to make things right." They sat quietly, letting the weight of their words settle between them. Parker felt her heart begin to thaw, piece by piece. She remembered all the small, quiet moments they'd shared. The way Lena's laughter used to fill the room. The way her hand felt in hers. The way she always knew what Parker needed to hear. She finally looked at Lena, her voice steady but soft. "If you're here because you want me to be a quick fix or a soft place to land, then leave now. I can't be that for you anymore." Lena reached across the small space between them and took Parker's hand, her touch warm, grounding. "I'm here because I want a second chance. And I know I don't deserve it. But if there's any part of you that could forgive me, I want to try again." Parker felt her heart pound, each beat filling her with a mixture of fear and hope. She knew the risks. She knew how much it would hurt if Lena left again. But there was also a glimmer of something more. A possibility, fragile but real. "I don't know if I can trust you yet," Parker whispered. "But I'm willing to see if we can rebuild something, one day at a time." Lena's eyes filled with gratitude, and she squeezed Parker's hand, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "That's more than I could ever ask for." They sat together, fingers intertwined, letting the silence settle around them like a soft blanket. The clock ticked in the background, but for the first time, Parker didn't feel like she was running out of time. Instead, she felt as if time was on their side, giving them a chance to start again one slow step at a time.